Okay, so let's keep going. So Islam spreads to Africa. I know this part of the lesson is really, really important to when we get to the Crusades. So I wanted to make sure I included this information for you guys because it really is part of that narrative. So during the 600, Muslim Arabs conquered Egypt. They brought Islam to Africa. The Arabs then went across northern Africa. By the mid 700s, they had control of most of the region. North Africa became part of the Muslim Caliphate. The Caliphate was the Muslim political and religious state. The ruler of the Caliphate was the Caliph. A Caliph was viewed as a successor of the Prophet Muhammad, who was the founder of Islam. Caliph means successor in Arabic. Many groups have fought for control of the Caliphate. The Umayyad Caliphate ruled during much of the invasion of North Africa. The Muslims encouraged the people they conquered to convert to Islam. However, they usually did not force them to convert. Muslim Arabs formed the ruling class of the conquered lands. However, Muslim non-Arabs, such as the nomadic Almoravids, were also allowed to rule states with the Caliphate. Non-Arabs who practiced other religions were in a class below the Muslim non-Arabs. The lowest class of Muslim society was enslaved people. The Muslim Arabs brought their own culture and learning to North Africa. This included math, science, art, and literature. Muslims also brought a special style of architecture. They built mosques with domes, tall, slender towers called minarets, and geometric gardens. Arab traders and pilgrims would travel across North Africa. They would see familiar shapes and designs in each city, with the dome of its mosque rising above. Mosques were built by local architect builders using local materials, particularly clay, and traditional shapes and decorations. However, Muslim architecture was not used in sub Sahara Africa. Mosques can vary in size and complexity. Some mosques are basic assemblies for halls for prayer. Others are elaborate buildings, such as the one shown in this picture. Islam spreads to West and East Africa. During the 800s, Muslim merchants began to trade with parts of West Africa. They traded salt from North Africa for gold from West Africa. Through these exchanges, the merchants of West Africa learned about Islam. Cultural diffusion. Most of the first converts of Islam to Islam in the West Africa were merchants. Many West African political leaders also converted to Islam. These leaders usually allowed local people to keep practicing traditional religions. Members of other religions were protected, although they often had to pay a tax to continue to practice their religion. Arab merchants did not only travel to West Africa, they also sailed to East Africa, and some settled along the coast. They introduced Islam to that region. Thus, in both East Africa and West Africa, Islam was brought by merchants rather than conquest. Rulers who converted to Islam accepted those who did not convert. They included Islamic rules in the laws, but they did not require non Muslims to attend mosques, nor did they force them to give up their traditional religious practices and beliefs. For centuries, Islam has existed side by side with local and traditional religions. The Mali Empire. Who was Mansa Musa? So, while the Ghana Empire was in decline, the Kingdom of Mali was growing. The Kingdom of Mali began in south of Ghana, around the source of the Niger River. It was in the southern part of the modern country of Mali. Excuse me. Around 1230, Sundiata Keita ruled Mali. He led a rebellion against Ghana and conquered the empire. Sundiata established his capital city in Niani. The Mali Empire had begun. By defeating Ghana, Mali gained control of the gold and salt trade. Mali controlled these valuable trade routes for about 300 years, from around 1200 to 1500. Sundiata's successors expanded the Mali Empire. Eventually, it stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the west, to what is Niger today, and from the southern forest in the northern city of Timbuktu. Timbuktu was a crossroads for cultures on both sides of the Sahara. It became a center for learning. It attracted scientists, philosophers, and religious scholars from Egypt and Mecca. By 1450, Timbuktu was reported to have 25,000 scholars. Many of their writings are now in libraries and museums in Timbuktu. Mansa Musa ruled from 1307 to 1332. Under his rule, the Mali Empire expanded to its largest boundaries. The empire controlled the gold mines in the south and the salt mines in the north. Mansa Musa expanded trade throughout the empire and across the Sahara. He sent ambassadors to the Islamic states in Morocco and Egypt. Mansa Musa became well known outside West Africa. He went to Mecca on a pilgrimage or religious journey. In 1324, Mansa Musa traveled by caravan across the Sahara to Morocco and then across to North Africa. He got to the Egyptian city of Cairo after 8 months of travel. Witnesses said that the caravan contained more than 60,000 men and 80 camels. Each camel carried 300 pounds of gold. And just think about that for a second. In Cairo, Mansa Musa spent gold lavishly. In fact, he spent so much that by the time he left, the price of gold had dropped greatly. It did not recover for 12 years. Europeans and North Africans were impressed by the stories of Mansa Musa's wealth. Tales of the rich kingdom spread. I just want you guys to think about that for 1 second. He gave away so much gold or traded so much gold, he actually devalued the price of gold. This is the Grand Mosque in Djenzi. Every year I have a hard time pronouncing that word. The founder of the Mali Empire, Sundiata, was a Muslim, which helped his relations with Islamic merchants from his northern Africa. However, he also continued to allow his subjects to perform religious rites from local religions in his kingdom. The pilgrimage of Mansa Musa. In the 1200s, the Mali Empire in West Africa gained much wealth and influence throughout the gold and salt trade. Its cities became centers of the caravan trade. That trade extended beyond the Sahara Desert. The empire was founded by a man named Sundiata. Most scholars believe he had close ties to Muslim merchants. They think he practiced a mix of Islam and traditional religion. In 1307, Sundiata's grandson, or perhaps grandnephew, Mansa Musa, became the emperor of Mali. Mansa Musa was a faithful Muslim. All Muslims must make a pilgrimage, or Hajj, to Mecca, the holy city of Islam, at least once in their life. Mansa Musa made this pilgrimage with 60,000 of his followers. Everyone in the pilgrimage was dressed in fine clothes. A camel caravan carried food and supplies for the travelers. It also carried 300 pounds of gold. The route to Mecca went through the Egyptian city of Cairo. When Mansa Musa arrived in Cairo, at first he was focused on religious acts. He did not meet with the Sultan of Cairo. Eventually, however, the Sultan's officials convinced Mansa Musa to pay tribute to the Sultan. Mansa Musa did this. In addition, he and his followers spent a lot of money. In doing so, they flooded the Cairo market with gold. With so much gold in the city, the value of the gold dropped sharply. In fact, 12 years later, gold in Cairo had still not fully regained its value. Because of Mansa Musa's pilgrimage, people in all the Muslim lands and even Europe heard of Mali's great wealth. As a result, many countries wanted to find the source of this amazing wealth. The achievements of Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa made the city of Timbuktu in Mali an important trade center. From Timbuktu, he set up a caravan connections with trade cities throughout the North Africa. He also helped Timbuktu become a cultural center. He supported the arts and learning. He made the mosque at Sankore a school for teaching history, law, and theology. Later, the school became the University of Sankore. Mansa Musa brought an architect back with him from Egypt who designed mosques in Gao and Timbuktu. Mansa Musa died around 1332. Mansa Musa used Islam to increase trade with the rest of the world and to bring more wealth to his people. He was a devoted Muslim. However, he kept his kingdom separate from the caliphate. In this way, Mali and the rest of West Africa were quite different from North Africa. The kingdoms of North Africa were conquered by Muslim invaders and in some cases forced to convert to Islam. In contrast, Islam was brought to Mali and other West African kingdoms peacefully and gradually. It spread mostly throughout personal influence and by word of mouth. This meant that traditional religion and Islam coexisted. Most Malians kept at least some of their traditional beliefs and customs. Thus, West African culture and even West African Islam is a blend of local and imported practices, which again we call, yes, you guessed it, cultural diffusion. Ibn Battuta was a Muslim scholar and traveler from Morocco. He gives us the clearest picture of the Kingdom of Mali. In 1353, he traveled to Mali. He stayed in the capital, Niani, for about 50 days, and he wrote down his observations about the kingdom. He praised its safety and the speedy way that the justice was carried out. The decline of Mali. After Mansa Musa's death, the Mali Empire slowly declined. The city of Gao, on the northern section of the Niger River, rebelled against Malian rule. Tuareg people from the north captured the city of Timbuktu. People in the west and the empire rebelled as well. Gradually, Mali lost control of its empire and the gold salt trade. Around 1550, Mali stopped being an important political power. The Songhai Empire rose in its place. And this is the last of our African trading networks. So how did the Songhai Empire gain power? The Songhai Empire revolved around the city of Gao and the northern bend of the Niger River. The people of Gao rebelled against the Mali Empire. Afterwards, they continued to expand their territory. Ali, the great ruler Songhai from 1464 to 1492, he formed a fierce army of cavalry, horse riders, and infantry foot soldiers. He captured the cities of Timbuktu and Djenné along the Niger River. He brought the people he conquered into his army. This helped increase its numbers and strength. Another strong Songhai ruler was Aksia Muhammad Touré. He ruled from 1493 to 1528. He overthrew the Songhai king and proclaimed himself king. He expanded the boundaries of the Songhai Empire until it reached its greatest extent. He also created a system for governing his vast empire. He divided the land into 5 provinces and appointed a governor for each. As it expanded, the Songhai Empire, like the Mali Empire, took control of profitable north-south trade routes. At its peak, the Songhai Empire stretched from southern goldfields to the northern salt mines. In the other direction, it stretched from the Atlantic Ocean in the west to modern Niger and Nigeria in the east. The Songhai Empire was the largest of the 3 empires in West Africa, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. It was also the shortest lived. In the 1580s, Moroccan forces invaded from across the Sahara. First, they took the salt mines of Taghaza, then they went to conquer the heart of the Songhai Empire. The Songhai Empire fell around 1590. Okay, so that was a lot of information. You ready for a quiz? You're going to go back to Canvas and you are going to use this quiz code Mansa Musa and take a quiz. This is optional. You do not have to do it, but I would recommend that you do. Thanks for listening.